Indeed, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for inviting me this afternoon. It's absolutely fantastic to see so many of you here. As you've heard, my name is Jason Abel-White, a long-standing member of your community. I've actually lived in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough all of my life. I started out my career in a family business in central Cambridge, where some of you may have been customers of my father's butcher shop, Roy's, on Victoria Road for many years. And through that time, you really learn to engage with people, how to engage with people, and how to put the customer first, and how to interact with the local community. When I moved to St Ives, for whatever reason, I got involved in local politics in 1992. And I gradually got into it and have been a councillor now for the last 16 years. In that time, I've risen through the ranks and am currently, and for the last 5 years, have been the executive leader of Huntingdonshire District Council, which starts at Fen Drayton and goes right up to Peterborough and across. One of the largest district councils in the country, with a turnover of around £100 million. So I'm used to looking after big budgets, looking after complex organisations. And as an executive leader, not just a standard leader, I am charged with ensuring that all the executive functions of that council are carried out. With that in mind, with my service to the public and a real sense of duty to public service, when this opportunity came up within my party, I decided that for me, this is the next step. This is a very exciting proposition for me. Because I think there's an awful lot that needs to be done within our police force to ensure that we have good, strong community policing that you understand, that you see visibly on the ground, and that are there when you need them in a timely fashion, but are about when you don't need them, which is equally as important within your communities. I've got a good background in third sector working as well, working with the third sector, working with other strategic partners, which is going to be so incredibly important over the coming years. Driving out backroom office efficiencies, collaborating with other forces and indeed other councils, which we're already doing with Cambridge City and South Cambridgeshire District Council, something that I instigated. We can ensure that every single penny that is saved through collaboration and efficiency is then put on frontline policing. The very thing that you are telling me, going around our fine county, that you want us to protect, that you would like me to protect if I am elected next week. It is hugely important that you have a strong voice, and yes, I do get the argument around politics, around this position. It should be apolitical. Once elected, you do take an oath of impartiality, but as a Conservative, and bearing in mind, whatever happens, there will be a Conservative government until 2020. I feel that I will have the strongest voice to go through to the Home Secretary to argue our case in Cambridgeshire to ensure that every penny that is deserved of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is brought here. We are underfunded. We know we're underfunded. We've had an argument for years over education. I think it's really important, and we've won that argument, by the way. We're getting a better formula now. I think it's hugely important that the police is recognised as well. So I think with that, I think my colleagues will tell me am I nearly up to my... Oh no, I've got a minute left, so I can just keep going. Absolutely fantastic.
20% efficiency saving.
I could make that 20% efficiency saving, but I will go on slightly more. Absolutely. It's hugely important for all of you that we have a resilient police force. One of the biggest issues I have on the doorstep and getting out into your communities is people are saying we don't see enough policemen. We used to have a community sport officer, we don't anymore have one. It's important for me to make sure that that is reversed, that doesn't become the norm, because once it becomes the norm, then it's very difficult to reverse that. Community policing is at the heart of everything we do. Your safety will be at the heart of everything that I do. As a commissioner, I see this as my full-time role. I'm already stepping down as the leader of my council, no matter what happens at this election. I've done 5 years, and I've left it in the best financial position of any council in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and that is fact. So I think that going forwards, your police force, if I am elected, will be in incredibly safe hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me share a little bit about myself, actually. I started my working life in 1976, I believe, in Hampshire as a police cadet, before realising that I couldn't actually become a constable until I was 19 and a half. So, to please my parents, I thought if I joined another uniformed services, they wouldn't be disappointed that I'd join the RAF, where I stayed for 22 years. I've also been the quality and IT director for an international computer chip design company. I've been a director of a number of companies, including my own that I grew and then more recently sold, which were IT companies, one here in Salisbury and one in Sri Lanka. I've also sat on the Cambridgeshire Police Authority as an independent member before it became the Police and Crime Commissioner's empire, where I was the lead for performance for the force and also was the deputy chair of two of the committees. More recently, I was the leader of Cambridgeshire County Council, responsible for the 8,000 staff and responsible for the budgeting setting process with the reduction in funding of 35% from this Conservative government that I represented at the time. And those budget cuts I fought with ministers long and hard, and it was one of the key reasons for me leaving the Conservatives when I realised that the Conservative government doesn't value local services and it needs a clear, strong voice to fight against these cuts. As the leader, I was accused of trying to run the council like a business. Well, I have a great pride in that, actually, about meeting the customers' needs at the lowest cost, providing the best quality of output. But let's turn to policing. First and foremost, I think that I want to ensure that the interests of law-abiding citizens and victims are always put ahead of those of the criminals. Those that break the rules must be punished and not wrapped in cotton wool. Those that seek to disrupt our lives and make our lives a misery must be taught there are consequences. But of course we must also have and invest in rehabilitation. It's clear to me that for a confident and civilised society we need a strong and resilient and effective police force to provide the necessary stability for us all to flourish within. But we have a problem. The Conservative government doesn't appear to be taking our security seriously anymore. Since 2010, the police numbers are down in Cambridgeshire by 8%, which explains why you no longer see officers in your communities in the way that you used to. We don't have enough prisons, we don't have enough resources for rehabilitation, and yet the risk to us in our county has gone up, and the numbers have gone up hugely. We're the fastest growing county in the country. If you add to that the funding for mental health and social services have been slashed, we've got a recipe here for disaster. When people are asked, they tell me that across the county that women are feeling unsafe to go out at night. 90% of them we've asked are unsafe to go out at night. And they say the contributory factor for this is actually the lack of police presence on the streets and in the communities. Some say they're scared to walk through parks because of illegal drug dealing. My stance on drug dealing, I'm afraid, is a zero tolerance position. I think approving of illegal drug use and trying to legalise it sends exactly the wrong message to our young people. They need to be taught what is right and what is wrong in the same way that we were taught. In this country we police with the consent of the people. That means involving them, and I'm afraid to say we have had a complete failure of public engagement and democratic accountability during the last 4 years of the PCC, and I think we probably all wish to correct that. It's important that our communities know that we are there. I will be slashing the cost of the Police and Crime Commissioner's office. I will not be having a deputy, which will save around £30,000. I will be removing the position of Chief Financial Officer from the Police and Crime Commissioner's office because the constabulary already have one and they can be shared. I object to the fact there are two media managers and a director that sits above them, one for the Police and Crime Commissioner, one for the constabulary. These are just a complete waste of money. The number of staff in that office has gone from 6 when I was on the Police Authority to 17 now. £350,000 cost when I was on the Police Authority, 650 now. So don't anybody ever tell you that the Conservatives are good at managing budgets, because they're not in this case. I have a no-nonsense approach to policing, as I do in all other things. Just about that, are we? Okay, so let me finish on saying I also want more police, but the way to get that is to have a real grown-up conversation with the government about fair funding, not just for the police, but the associated mental health and social services. Thank you.
Hi everybody, good afternoon, isn't it? Yeah. My name's Dave Bagent. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me before I start. I'm the son of a police officer. I joined the fire service at 18 and served for 30 years as a firefighter, in fact over 30 years. So I have a real insight into public service. So I come from a public service background. My daughter is currently a police officer in the Metropolitan Police Service. When I retired, like a number of you people, I got involved in education later in my life. I took a first degree in sociology and got so captured by it and became so much part of it that I recognised that this was something very special, an opportunity that I was given. So I took a PhD and I successfully read for a PhD on uniform public service culture, which in part looked back at my own life as a firefighter, but a lot of the evidence that I took was from the police service. And you'll notice that I use the word police service because I think that's what the police are there to do. I don't use the word police force because it infers something that I don't think the police real job, the most of their job, is spent working with the public, or should be. Having completed my PhD and gained a considerable understanding to what people now currently call canteen cultures in uniform public services, I went to Anglia-Ruskin University and asked them, would they let me write a degree that would prepare people for public service, that would set them up with an understanding of the difficulties that were involved in being a uniform public servant, the difficulties in being a police officer, joining with all the best aspirations in the world, but getting drawn into a very, very difficult and complicated culture that often becomes very self-serving. So I got permission from Anglia-Ruskin, I staffed the degree, I gained the students to set the degree up, and I led that degree for 9 years. And during that time, hundreds of students came through that degree. Most of them wanted to be police officers. A lot of them now are currently serving in Cambridgeshire Police Service. And I hope that some of the things that I gave them, they've taken with them. And it will be interesting if I get to be selected as Police and Crime Commissioner, to be able to meet with them again and see where they are in that situation. So having had a career as a public servant, as a firefighter, and then as an academic, I then went into political service. And so for the last 5 years, I've been involved in politics. So I'm, unlike the people around me, I'm not a career politician. I'm somebody that's come to politics with an idea of service, of public service, helping the people. I am a Labour Party politician, I make no secret about that. And in regards to policing, I think that gives you a certain credential. You can understand where I'm coming from. The police service was increased by over 18,000 officers during the time the Labour government was in power. They brought in PCSOs, and I fully support that position because I think that provides a link with the public. Of course, since the Labour government have gone, we've lost 18,000 police officers, and in Cambridge we've lost 100 police officers that have been taken off the front line. The jobs have been done away with. So we talk about, is politics involved? Of course it's involved. We have a Conservative government who we all know have been involved in cutting public services. Now some of you will think that's a great idea, but I guess probably the majority of you think that's not such a good idea. So politics is involved. When I was elected as City Councillor for Romsey, if I get elected as the Police and Crime Commissioner, I will represent everybody. I will not worry about what country you come from, or what party you belong to, or what your gender or sex or ethnicity is. I will represent everybody. So you have that as a pledge. So what's going to be at the core of what I'm offering? Well, my academic research and my actual public service tells me that the police do not engage enough with the public. The police work very hard, we know that, they work very hard. But they solve something like 15% of crime by clever detective work. The rest of crime is solved when we give them information. There's a breakdown, there's a barrier between the majority of the public and the police service. So my work will be involved in bringing the public and the police together. I am going to physically take senior police officers into the community to meetings like this. What we will do is we will talk. We will improve the relationship between the police and the public. We will set local policing priorities Those priorities then become my priorities, which in turn will become the Chief Constable's priorities, and it will be their job to actually see it there installed. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here and see so many familiar faces. And I'm sorry, I think you all spotted I wasn't Rupert, but I'm sorry also, Rupert is also not a woman. So sorry about that. And I'm not going to start off by talking about my own track record, tempting though it is, because I'd actually much rather talk about Rupert here. And actually I can do that with quite a lot of pride, because Rupert, somebody I've known for a long time, really would be excellent at a role like this. This is his job. He's actually a policing and security professional. That's what he does. He's been involved with setting up things like the National Centre for Policing Excellence. He's been on the Fire Authority. He's been a custody visitor looking at what actually happens to people who are arrested, how they are treated. He's been a county councillor. He's done a huge range of things. I mean, he really understands how to do this role and how to make it really make a difference. He really would be a great person, and I can say that from years of knowledge. But it's not just about him and about his track record, it's also about what it is that he wants to do and what we want to do, because he and I have spoken over many years about this, because it's sort of ran through all three talks here. There's a drive that we see time and time again that misunderstands what the job of the police actually is. If you go back to when the bobbies were set up by Sir Robert Peel, the job of the police wasn't to solve crimes. It wasn't to catch people after crimes. The number one job was to stop the crimes from happening in the first place. And that still, to me, is what I really want the police to be doing. I would much rather a burglary didn't happen than that after it happened, a police officer came round and very effectively solved it. You know, that's good, but it's not as good as it simply not happening. And so the thing that Rupert would work for, that I've worked for many years, is to try to actually do the things that work to reduce crime in the first place. And that runs, so as I said, Rupert was involved in the National Centre for Policing Excellence. We now have a College of Policing to try to work out what actually works when police officers do it. There are lots of things that police officers do around the country that actually don't help catch people, don't help stop crime from happening, but nobody's really done the work to try to find out. There are some interventions on domestic violence that were shown to actually increase the death rate for women. We need the police to take domestic violence very seriously, but if it makes more women die earlier, that's not the right thing for police officers to do. So that real focus on what works, that is the big thing for Rupert, that's the big thing for him and for all of us. And there are lots of things there. We should do much more to focus on people who have offended. There is a huge number of people who've offended once, and then they re-offend. People who come out of short-term prison sentences. We can stop that. There's some really nice work on ways of tackling that to make sure they don't go out and re-offend. One thing I was shocked at a few years ago was the fact that people were often released from prison on a Friday with a bit of cash, nowhere to go and stay. So they found themselves staying with their old mates who were often doing some of the same things they were doing before they went into prison. If you want to design a system to get people to re-offend, that's what you'd have done. So let's move away from it. Let's look at things like restorative justice. And police involvement for restorative justice can be incredibly effective at reducing reoffending and is actually in many studies preferred by the victims. So that is the key thing. How do we stop crimes from happening? How do we then make the police take crime seriously they haven't taken seriously? Things like domestic violence, things like child sexual exploitation, where there's been some awful things around the country, but also around here in Cambridgeshire. How do we tackle sexual assault, sexual violence, the sorts of things that are happening that are just beginning to be reported and that are not taken seriously enough? How do we make sure that we do that? But also a big focus on trust, on openness, on transparency. And I hear all of the comments about going and talking to people, and that is something which I know Rupert is passionate about, which I'm passionate about as well. You have to engage with the public, and that is certainly something to do. Neighbourhood policing. There's lots more I could say. Let me just finish on neighbourhood policing, because I've seen how good that can be. When I was a new county councillor in East Chesterton, we had a big problem with minor crime, antisocial behaviour. Hugely problematic. We had one police officer who came in, and he set up a number of schemes, a guy called Nick Percival, PC Nick as he was known, he's now been promoted, and within a year, he managed to halve the amount of crime that was happening in that area. Some very, very nice schemes. He was then given a formal reprimand, because he'd failed to hit the quota of arrests he was supposed to have made that year. A target that had come down from the Home Secretary. I went into bat for him because, to me, if you can keep halving the crime rate, I don't care if you stop arresting anybody, if you can keep stopping the crimes from happening. Neighbourhood policing of that sort of quality, that will make a difference in reducing crime. So Rupert will be fantastic and will really reduce the crime rather than just wait for it to have happened. Thank you.